Okay, so before we dive into this, I want to mention a halacha that I probably should have mentioned. It's not really negeh any specific spot, but it's just interesting to know. So there was a shayla today. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but like this. Let's say you have a situation where throughout the laws of Basar or Taruvis, you get a psak that there was a little bit of milk and meat that got mixed in together, but the rabbi says it's fine. It's balta b'shishim, it's fine. Balta b'shishim. The shayla is there an inyan to not eat it? Meaning, it's balta b'shishim, so it's technically mutter. Is there such a concept of, it may be better to, like a little bit of milk falls into the cholent, and you learn the halachas, and you come to the conclusion that it's fine halachically, is there such an inyan to say, yeah, but the mouth of a Jew shouldn't put stuff in their mouth? So I just want to mention this. It could be it's a shayla. It could be it's a broader shayla. I'll just tell you the Bnei Yisachar. Bnei Yisachar. Now Bnei Yisachar is not usually a psak, but sometimes he goes into psak. And he writes, this is in Tishrei, he writes in one of his mamarim, he says that you should eat it. It's dafka inyan to eat it. Why? Because he says, this is like a Chassidish Torah, it's an Emes Torah, but Chassidish Torah. He says that there's a spark of kedusha in everything, right? There's a spark of godliness in everything. That's what gives everything life. When you have a cup of water, that means that your megala, as the Balatani would say, it's klipas noiga, right? That means that there's a spark of holiness in this water. And when you make a bracha, you're being mevarer, that nitzutz, that spark. Now there's a spark of holiness in chazer as well, because it wouldn't exist if there was no spark of God. Now, just because there's a spark of holiness in chazer doesn't mean you're allowed to eat it. On the contrary, it's what the Balatani describes as shalish klipas hatmeis. You're not allowed to touch it. It's a spark that will burn. You're not allowed to touch such a thing. But says the Bnei Yisachar, if you have chazer that's batal b'shishim, that's an opportunity, according to halacha, for a Jew to actually be mevarer the spark that's found in Isurim. And he says, so it's something that you actually should do. So if you ever find, the Bnei Yisachar shita, that if you ever have a situation where something is batal b'shishim, or there's some sort of mixture, or non-kosher and kosher, and the rabbi says it's fine, not like you could be making mutter, then adarabba, there's no inyan to be machmir. You should eat it, because you're able to be mevarer the spark that's found in Isurim in a mutter dika way. That's a sheet of Bnei Yisachar. It could be it's a bigger shayla, because you could also say that, it's metamte maleh, but that's a Bnei Yisachar shita, and just wanted to mention that because it's something that comes up. I had a couple shaylas today of cases, not just yet, and a couple other ones that where there was a spoon that was treif that got mixed in with other spoons, and it's bata baroiv and all these things. So he said, yeah, but what do I do? I said, okay, you have the Bnei Yisachar. Again, that it's such a situation that it's not such a terrible thing. Correct. The point is just the concept of it, that it's not, if it's mutter, then adarabba, it's not something that should be avoided. Now, just to go back to our discussion, so I want to cover three things today. The first one is I'm going to review this sheet, and then Sif Hey, and then we'll begin Sif Vav. Sif Vav is very long, but we'll begin Sif Hey, we'll do Sif Hey and Sif Vav. Now what you have over here, this is actually an article that I found online from the Jewish Action magazine, where they interviewed Rabbi Gnak. And he was asked about the status of lab-grown meat. So it's appropriate based on what we learned last time with Maris Ayin. Lab-grown meat is basically, the concept is that they figured out that the same way there's stem cells which reproduce, that they're using to heal people, they realized that they could take a stem cell from a cow and use it to reproduce, and it could make a steak. It can make burgers out of it. It's right now still very expensive. It was originally, Rabbi Gnak said that at the first time that he looked into it, it was $3,000 a burger. And now it's $600. We're getting there. We're getting somewhere. So the question is, what is the status of these burgers? Does it have to be from a kosher cow? Is it pariv? Is it basar? So they bring that. I'll read it, but I'll run through it. So the question that was asked to Rabbi Gnak, RG is Rabbi Gnak, does lab-grown meat have the status of meat or pariv? So Rabbi Gnak said, on the face of it, one would assume such meat would be pariv, because it's not from a cow. Modern science is able to reconstruct the host environment, allowing the stem cells, again, these lab-grown meat is stem cells, so it's really created in a lab. The source material is basar, but it's really made in a lab. So he said you'd think that it wouldn't really have the status of meat. But we'll go to the third paragraph. They turn to the Rabbanim, and this is what the psak of the Rabbanim is. Rav Asher Weiss, a leading dayan in Eretz Yisrael and halachic advisor for the OU kosher, he maintains that lab-grown meat is considered halachically meat, meaning it has to come from a kosher cow. You'd wait 6 hours. Lab-grown meat is meat. That's Rav Asher Weiss's shita. In his view, if it looks like meat and has all the characteristics of meat, it's meat. That's Rav Asher Weiss's shita. So that's Rav Asher Weiss's shita. Rav Hershey Schechter, Rosh Hashiva of YU, and he's also one of the big poskim for the OU, he has a very interesting shita. I got to tell you, Rav Hershey Schechter, to me, this is a mind-blowing shita. He holds that lab-grown meat is not meat midaraisa, but it has the status of meat midarabanan. Meat midarabanan. What does that mean? Right? Chicken and milk is asur for Chazal because of a harchaka, a gezerah. So he feels that lab-grown meat is included in the issa derabanan of Chazal. Meaning that to cook lab-grown meat and milk, according to Basar Weiswood, can be an issa deraisa. According to Rosh Hashanah, it's an issa derabanan. It's a tremendous chiddush. I'll tell you, it's like similar to Semicha Shiurim. Semicha Shiurim had a famous shita that he was very against Shabbos clocks, timers. He was very against that. For lights, he was makel, but for everything else, he was only makel with lights because it was already done. He couldn't stop it. But he was against the whole premise. And he said, in one of his shuvas, he said, it really included in the Issa Derabanan of Amir La'akum. Right? Why is it that you can't get a guy to do something for you on Shabbos outside if there's no heter? Right? What's the concept? Because the Rambam says Chazal didn't want Shabbos to turn into a Sunday. Because if I could just have a guy operate a factory for me, right? If he could just do whatever I want from me, as long as I'm not the one clicking the button, then Mamish Shabbos, says the Rambam, can become Chol. So Ramosha says, if you could have a timer, then Shabbos Vaita could become Chol. It's included in the Yisad Rabbanon. Ravad Yosef in a tshuva says to Ramosha, in response, he says, respectfully, we don't do that. If it's not included in Chazal, we don't include it in Chazal. Chazal, we don't just say, well, if it was around in the times Chazal, it would be Aser. Then Ein Lo Davar Saif. Ravadi is very against that throughout his truvas. He always feels that you can't do that because how do you know? You're making a presumption, but you don't know. So over here also, Rav Shechter, very interesting. He mamish feels that lab-grown meat is mamish chicken. It has a status of chicken. It's lab-grown meat is chicken. Because he says that, in other words, lab-grown meat has the same status as poultry. From a biblical perspective, it's not forbidden to eat or cook poultry with milk. The rabbis forbade it due to poultry's similarity to meat, to avoid confusion and potential violations. So he feels that lab-grown meat would have the status of chicken. It's a tremendous chiddush. Now, by the way, just to end off, because the last two paragraphs is why I printed it out, after much consultation with poskim, the OU is taking a stringent position and regards lab-grown meat as meat on a biblical level, meaning that they will hold that it's mamish basar min haTorah when it comes to kashrus. It should be noted that even according to those rabbinic authorities who regard lab-grown meat as pariv, such meat would need to be treated carefully because of the halachas of maris ayin. That is the prohibition against doing something that may cause another to think that one violated halacha. This is similar to the halacha in Shulchan Aruch, stating that one who wants to cook meat with almond milk should place almonds or almond milk on the table to clearly indicate that he is not cooking or eating meat and milk together. And this is interesting, this last paragraph, because this is, I mentioned in the past that maris ayin is a problem until it becomes subjective enough that it's common. So obviously lab-grown meat is not common enough to do this, but he says, incidentally, Rav Genak adds, the issue of maris ayin also applies to plant-based burgers, such as the Impossible Burger. When eating the Impossible Burger with cheese should, for example, place the Impossible Burger package on the table. Now, it could be at this point, I have to check how many years ago this article was written, it could be at this point people know that the Impossible Burger is common enough, but the truth is, I don't know, I remember when it came out originally, we had dinner once and they were putting cheese on it, and I don't know if we thought about maris ayin. He does end off, there's a machlokas as to whether the issue of maris ayin applies even when one is alone at home, and that was the taisis that we saw last time, that if it looks like you're doing an issa Torah, then maris ayin does apply at home. So conceptually, if it looks like I'm cooking milk and meat together, that looks like an issa Torah, then l'chora you should have to be chayshish from maris ayin. Okay, that was the first part. Let's run through, and then at the end, happy to take all the questions. So what I want to do is, we're up to Siman Pei Zayin Sif Hey. The Mechaber says like this. Now, just a quick hakdama for the Sif. From here on, we're going to try to, I'm not going to move too quickly because I'm not going to do it to you guys, but these Simanim are not as practical, but Torah, so this Sif is dealing with the following concept, and that is, a chicken has an egg, right? When the egg starts, it's in the mother's belly, yeah? At that point, it's still considered chicken. When it lays the egg, we have no qualms and no problems of taking that egg and making an omelet with cheese, because it's no longer a chicken, it's a beya, it's an egg. The question is, at what stage does it go from chicken to egg? And it's negeya if you shech the chicken and open it up and you find an egg inside. At what point in the development is it considered a full-fledged egg? You can make an omelet out of it, or is at what point still a chicken, still part of the chicken? Now, the way the development of the egg is as follows. The first thing that develops is the yolk. It starts with the yolk, and it's still connected. There's like a what do you call it? The umbilical cord of a chicken, whatever that's called. It's me'ura begidin. So it starts with a yolk, and it's still mamish connected. Then the white develops around it. Then it has a soft shell. You know when you peel a hard-boiled egg, there's like a thin shell. So it goes yolk, white, soft, and then hard. That is the process. And at some point, it looks in the Rishonim, at some point the umbilical cord pops off. Unclear, I think it depends on which, like some chickens it pops off when it's still a yolk sometimes, but it's yolk, white, soft, hard. That's the process. So the question is, out of those 4 stages, at what point is it no longer chicken and it's an egg? And again, it's negeya if you crack it open. If you crack open a chicken, you shech the chicken, you open up the belly, and you find an egg at a certain development stage. Can I cook it with milk? That's the shayla. So the Shulchan Aruch says like this: Be'im hanimtsoim ba'oifus. If you shech the chicken and you open it up and you find an egg in there, so here's the Shulchan Aruch shita. Imhem gemurais. If it's finished, what is finished? Dahainu sheyesh lechalvoin v'cholmoin. It has the yolk and the white. According to the Shulchan Aruch, if it has the yolk and the white, af al pi shehi me'ura begidin, even if it's still connected with the cord, with the umbilical cord, which I know there's no umbilical cord on the chicken, but the point is, it's white and the yellow. If it's got the yolk and the white, you're fine. It's an egg. You could make an omelet out of it, even if it's me'ura begidin. Even if it's me'ura begidin, umuter lo hareza gemura umuter la'achlai b'chalav. You could eat that egg at that development stage with milk. But if it just has the yolk, aser levashlam b'chalav, you're not allowed to cook it with milk, which we'll address that in a moment, because just the yolk on its own is still chicken. You don't have to wait 6 hours. Okay. So, just to summarize, the shita of the Shulchan Aruch is that yolk on its own is still basar, is still chicken. Yolk and white, even if it's me'ura begidin, is an egg. Okay. So there's 2 stages in the Mefarshim on this Shulchan Aruch. Again, just to review, yolk on its own is still chicken, a problem, but yolk and white is fine. Because it's no longer chicken, it's an egg. There's 2 steps in the Mefarshim. One is practical halacha of stages, but we're going to put that aside for a second. We're going to focus on the Shulchan Aruch, and there's a very interesting contradiction. And this is, it's an interesting contradiction. The Shulchan Aruch is telling us that if it's got the yolk and it's got the white, even if it's me'ura begidin, it's not basar anymore. It's an egg, and you could make an omelet out of it. So white and yolk, even if it's me'ura begidin, you can make an omelet. Here's the problem. I'll say outside the contradiction, and then we'll see it inside. The Shulchan Aruch also writes that if a person kicks a chicken, as you do, and a white and yolk comes out, the same stage, the very same stage that he says you can make an omelet out of it, if it comes out of the chicken, me'ura begidin, you can't eat it. Why? It's eva min achai. It's eva min achai, meaning it's still part of the chicken. So there's a straight up contradiction. Over here, the Mechaber is saying is that if at that stage, which is the yolk and the white, me'ura begidin, you could eat it with cheese and you could eat it with milk because it's done. It's an egg. It's not chicken anymore. It's an egg. So then how come when it comes out of the animal at that stage, you can't eat it because it's eva min achai? Eva min achai means that if you eat something, if you eat basar from an animal that's alive, it's a problem. If it's an egg, it's not eva min achai. So it's a contradiction. At that stage, how does the Mechaber define it? Over here he's saying you could eat it with cheese, which means it's not basar. But he's also saying that it's eva min achai. Eva min achai is basar. So is it still chicken or is it an egg? You understand? That's the contradiction. At this stage, is it considered still a piece of the oaf? Is it considered a piece of meat? Or is it considered an egg? He's saying that it's an egg that you could eat it with milk, but he's also saying that it's eva min achai. That is the contradiction that all the Mefarshim are bothered by. Let's just see it inside. This is in the Taz, in Sifkatan Vav. The Taz writes, Marshal Hikshalzeh. The Marshal is bothered. Perikol Basar Siman Beis. Maishna, why is it that the Mechaber is saying that the yolk and the white, that's Me'ura Begidin, you're allowed to eat it with cheese? Mimashakasav Rajba Heviu Batur, but the Rajba and the Tur and the Mechaber himself in Siman Pei Vav, Vehikar Tarnagolos Al Znava, which is that if you kick a chicken and that same staged egg comes out, Me'ura begidin, it comes out of the chicken itself. Dimi Me'ura begidin have a kibasa menachai. It's Eva menachai. Eva menachai is basar. So is this stage considered an egg, or is it considered a part of the chicken? That is the question. It's a contradiction in the mechaber itself. So there's basically three answers. It says the Taz, the Marshal says, Ve'ein loymar shani hasam diyesh issa doraisa. Answer number one is that it's very simple. Ever menachai is an issa doraisa. Chicken and milk is an issa derabanan. So it's very simple. By an issa doraisa, we're going to be strict and treat it as meat. But when it comes to an issa derabanan of chicken and milk, it's only an issa derabanan, we'll be lenient. That's the Marshal introduces answer number one. In other words, very simple. It is a contradiction, but one's deraisa and one's derabanan. Ever menachai is an issa deraisa. Chicken and milk is an issa derabanan. Says the Marshal, Diminoli lachalik. Where do you get that answer from? First of all, okay, I'm asking you whether this development stage is considered basar or an egg, and you're telling me it depends whether it's deraisa or derabanan. I don't understand that. It either is or it isn't. So I don't like that. Says the Marshal, I don't like that answer. Throws out answer number one. Answer number two, v'tiritz. So the Marshal says, the mashakasav la'el shalei nigmeru, hainu shalei nigmeru kol tsarkan, v'afal pi sheyesh lechalmoin v'chalboin, hayuroi lo'ichem bil'achalav, afilu hin me'uris b'kidin, v'atam. Why are we allowed to treat it as an egg when it comes to milk and meat? L'fi she'ein lem tam basar. I don't understand this answer either, but he's basically saying, it is basar, but it doesn't taste like basar. It doesn't taste like so it's Eva Menachai because it's still considered basar, but you're allowed to cook it in milk because it doesn't taste like basar. Says the Marshal, okay, so that's answer number two, which is it basar or not? It is basar, but it doesn't taste like basar. So says the Marshal, the Taz says, this is all doichik. Okay. So those two answers so those are the two answers of the Marshal. Answer number one is that deraisa derabanan. Answer number two is that it doesn't taste like basar. Both of these answers are pretty hard to understand. Go to the Shach for a moment. The Shach in Sifkat and Tes. We'll come back to the Taz in a moment just to get the practical halacha. The Shach writes in Sifkat and Tes. He mentions the same question. V'adamashma le'el simin pei vav. Sif dalid. De behika tarnagoylis al znava. That if you kick the chicken on the tail, v'hetila beyim, and the chicken eggs come out at this development stage, the asuris v'shum ever menachai, imuris begidin, right? That it's a problem of ever menachai. Aval pisha nigmara b'chalboin v'chalboin, avma kivan shemura chashiv kibasar. So the question is again, it's a contradiction at this stage. Is it considered a piece of the chicken or is it considered an egg? Shani hacha dilin basa b'chal of the of shehum derabanan hikilu. First of all, says the Shach, I give an answer, the Marshal's answer, which is that it's deraisa derabanan. Ever menachai is deraisa, we'll treat it as basar. Chicken and milk is derabanan, will be lenient. Okay. Inami, shani hacha kivin dechal chad b'fnei atzmei shari. Okay, let me just go to this, the answer of the Shach himself. V'nirali, it's a line later. Dibalav hachi loy kasha midi. Dehach dehika b'tarnagoyel salz nava, da'afagav deloy chashiv basar, mikol makom achfilu cholav mamish hava asam shem ever menachai. I think this is a big chiddush. I don't think most people know this, and that is your entire question is making a false assumption. What was the question? You have this stage. The mechaber says you're allowed to make it into an omelet with cheese, so it's not a part of the chicken. The problem is it's an ever menachai, so that means that it is a part of the chicken. The answer is no. Ever menachai doesn't just apply to basar. Ever menachai means anything that comes out that is a part of the animal is a problem of ever menachai. The Gemara has a havamina. The Gemara says, why is milk not ever menachai? You ever think about that? That's the type of thing like a kid would ask you and it would stump you. Why is milk not ever menachai? Ever menachai means that something that comes from a living animal you're not allowed to eat. Milk comes from a living animal, so why are you allowed to eat milk? It's the Gemara shaila. So you know what the Gemara says? Because the pasuk praises Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Zavas Chalav Adavash. And it would not praise Eretz Yisrael as chalav if you couldn't drink milk. So Vaisachais milk is allowed. So says the Shach, you know what you see from here? You see from here that Ever Menachai doesn't just apply to basar. Ever Menachai is anything that is attached to the chicken or attached to a cow when it's alive, you can't eat. So the answer to the question is very simple. Is this stage considered a piece of the chicken? No. It's not. And that's why you can make an omelet out of it. Why is it Ever Menachai? Ever Menachai doesn't just apply to basar. Ever Menachai means anything that's a part of the animal is a problem of Ever Menachai. It could be Ever Menachai and not be halachically basar. So it's not basar, and hence you can make an omelet out of it, but it's a problem of Ever Menachai. That's the sheet of the Shach, and that's how he explains the mechaber. Okay, this is all more academic, and now let's get to the practical halacha. What is the stage of the chickens, the eggs? By the way, I'm going to do this fairly quickly because, there's no way this is not ever going to come up, I don't think, in a shayla. Maybe. The point is, at what stage is it considered fully developed that you're allowed to eat it with milk? So the mechaber shita is that if you have the white and the yolk, you're fine. Says the shach, this is in Sifkat and Yud, but I'm doing it on the sheets because I'm doing the underlined parts. The shach says, Ubesifri he'erachti bazeh. The shach writes, this is one line in. I know I normally don't do this, but it's a very long shach. The shach writes, Ubesifri he'erachti bazeh. In the Sifri I was marich, my sefer I was marich, ve'helesi. Lichachila ein la'echel b'cholav, afilu osan shenigmru b'chalvon, ubeklipas and racha. According to the shach, in order to make an omelet out of it, you need the white, you need the yolk, you need the soft shell, and l'chachila you should have the hard shell as well. In other words, it has to be fully done inside the chicken. That's the shita of the shach. Unlike the mechaber feels that as long as you have the white and the yolk, it's fine. The shach says, no, you need all the stages. You need the white, the yellow, the yolk. It needs to have the soft shell and the hard shell. That's the sheet of the shach. Aval b'di'eved, but b'di'eved im nisbashlum cholav nidr mutter aval imhen meuras afilu b'di'eved also. But let's say b'di'eved, says the shach. B'di'eved, as long as it's not still connected by the umbilical cord, you're fine. Okay, so lichachila, it should have everything done, but says the shach, b'di'eved, as long as it's the white and the yolk, without the umbilical cord, you're going to be okay. That's the shita of the shach. Okay, let's go weiter. I don't want to focus too much on it because I'll make a whole list at some point of every shita, but I think that's enough for the chicken part. There are other shitas, by the way. There is, to be fair, just to finish off, there is a taz. The taz does go back to the taz in Sifkat and Sifkat and Vav. The end of the taz did mention. So according to the shach, if it's white, yolk, soft shell, hard shell, you're fine. And you find it in the chicken. The taz does end off though. V'chol ze medina aval maharai, which is the Trumas Hadesh and Kosav ukumeduma she'ein hanoshim noigim heter afilu nigmer and legamri. Apparently this used to happen. I don't know. The minig was, in the times of the Trumas Hadeshin, is that they would not eat these eggs with milk at all, even if it was in a hard shell. If it was found inside the chicken, the minig was not to. So you have the halacha of the shach, but the minig is to avoid it. Okay, good. One last point about this, and then we'll go on to the next sif in the mechaber. Just to read the mechaber one more time, because I just want to make one point, then we'll see it in the shach. If you have chickens that are found, the eggs that are found in a chicken, if they're complete, it has the white and the yolk, even if it's still attached by the umbilical cord, the white and the yolk is already finished, it's developed, and you could eat it with milk. But if it just has the yolk, it's still a piece of chicken. You can't cook it in milk. Stop. Wait a minute. We did this last week. Chicken and milk, you're not allowed to cook together, according to the Shulchan Aruch. Maybe Marasayan, we talked about the sheet of the Taz, but forget about Marasayan. Chicken and milk, you can't cook together? Of course you're allowed to cook together. It's mutter b'bishul. Why is the Mechaber saying that if it's just a yolk, so if it's just a yolk, it's a piece of chicken, yeah? Okay, it's a piece of chicken. Asur lavashlam b'chalav. Why asur lavashlam b'chalav? So look at the Shach. The Shach addresses this in Sifkata and Yud Aleph. Koloshan hazeh kosav gam kein ha'ateres zahav. The ateres zahav, which is the Lavush, wrote this same lashon. The Lavush usually had the same lashon as the Shulchan Aruch. V'hu megumgam, and it's a confusing lashon. It's not so great. It's not meduyik. Megumgam means it's a little dirty. It's a little messy. Dehalavashal pshita deshari. You're allowed to cook chicken and milk together. So even if this yolk is a piece of chicken, you're allowed to cook it in milk. So why does the Mechaber say asal avashlam? You're allowed to. And the only thing I mentioned in the last 5 shiurim of chicken and milk together being cooked is maybe Marasayan according to the Taz. Maybe Marasayan according to the Taz. By the way, the Lavush himself holds there's no Marasayan. So you're allowed to cook chicken and milk together. Basically, kimat roib shitas. So, and it's only maybe a marasayin issue, but it's technically mutter. So why is the Mechaber saying asal levashlam? So it says the shach, elahai levashlam rasilam le'echlam. You have to change the lashon. That's what you have to do. It's like mishnayos. You have to say, okay, that's what it means. So when the Mechaber says asal levashlam b'chalav, it means asal le'echel b'chalav. Which, by the way, this is not the first time the Shach has done this. The Shach has done this before, that you have to start playing with the lashon of the mechaber. Okay, so when the mechaber says asar levashlam, it means asar le'echol b'chalav. So a yolk on its own, only a yolk is still considered a piece of chicken, and if it's a piece of chicken, you can't actually cook it with milk because you can't eat it with milk because chicken and milk is rabbinically forbidden to be eaten together. Okay, good. Before we go back, I'll take any questions out because before we go, good.
You said 3 answers to.
So one is that it's an issa deraisa, issa derabanan. One is that it doesn't have tam, whatever that means. And then the third one is the shach, is that even if it's considered, just because it's evim and achai doesn't mean it's basar. Milk would be asar for evim and achai. Evim and achai just means that it's a part of the chicken. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a basar of the chicken. Just evim and achai. It doesn't have to be basar. Why does it not make you fleshik? I guess because it's not really chicken. I don't know. The Mefarshim don't really explain it.
It's not an aver.
Yeah. No, well, Evim and Achai just applies to anything that is a part of the living animal. And like I said, it would apply to chicken as well.
Oh, it's attached.
Yeah.
If it's attached,
Yeah.
So the Shach again said practically we need all 4 stages.
The Shach would want all 4 stages to Lichachila be a problem.
And
B'di'evet, he would say that if it's just white and yellow, no Me'ura Begidin, you're fine. Hefsa Meruba, he's makel, just a yolk, but they'll put the Hefsa Meruba aside. Yeah?
This is on the...
Oh, on that one?
Did not speak at all about why isn't that a problem able to find to the cells? It's from a live animal, it's living cells.
I don't know, it's a good question. He actually does say, by the way, to be fair, he does say in that same article, it's a longer article, I couldn't paste it, he does say that you have to have it from a kosher cow and not a nevela. So I would assume, correct, so it's a good point, I would assume, according to Rav Asher Weiss, that it's actually basar, and it must come from a kosher, it would have to be shechted as well. It would not, it's a good point. Maybe Rav Shechter would say differently, but Rav Asher Weiss would probably say it would have to be from a non-Aver Min Achai, because he looks at it as an extension of that original. Maybe, I have to check the article. Yeah. Fair. I'll check it up in that article, I don't remember. Yeah?
Same thing. Rav Asher Weiss, what do you say about cheese? Like parv cheese. It looks like cheese, it tastes like cheese, shouldn't it also be?
But I don't know if we have a precedent for saying that, I don't know. This is, at least it's created, I don't know. It's a good, he would probably the same thing if stem cell cheese, he actually talks about it, stem cell cheese would probably have the same status of cheese as well.
Not parv cheese?
As he said? That's what I said? Oh, you sent this shit? I didn't listen to it. Okay, I don't know. Maybe he changed his mind, I don't know. Yeah?
It's still connected. What's the problem after you kick the chicken and it falls out? It's not connected anymore.
No, but it's the stage where it's still connected. That stage of where the it's not like you could peel it off, but the point is if it's still at the stage where it's by God still connected, that's considered basar still. The point is it's not a matter of whether it's practically, if it's still Me'ura Begidin, that means that it's not developed yet. That's the point. If Hashem hasn't detached on its own. Correct. All right, let's start. I'm sorry?
So they're arguing about when it's considered complete?
Correct.
One's saying when it comes off,
Correct. It's just a matter of when it becomes an egg as opposed to chicken. When the chicken becomes an egg. It's a different kind of question. What we'll do is we'll start Sif Vav. Well, maybe I'll be able to run through most of it. It's a long mechaber. There's one halacha. I'll read this one halacha that is so relevant when it comes to Hilchah Shabbos. It's mamish one of the most, when it comes to like Rav Vadia and Shlomo Zalman, it's a super relevant halacha when it comes to Hilchah Shabbos, and you wouldn't expect it. Let's see the mechaber inside. The mechaber is listing things that are not really basar b'chalav. Ha-mu'ushan. Mu'ushan means it's smoked. If you remember, basar b'chalav d'oraisa is only when they're cooked together with heat. This is, I'm smoking milk and meat together. So mu'ushan, or ha-mevusha b'chami tveria. Chami tveria is a geyser. So it is hot, but it's not heat from a fire, it's a natural geyser. The halacha is ein loikin alav. There is no lashes for basar b'chalav, meaning it is not basar b'chalav d'oraisa. Says the shach though, before we go back there, jump to the shach in Yud Gimel, avol isura miya ika, but it's basar b'chalav derabanan, meaning derabanan you're not allowed to cook together, derabanan you're not allowed to eat it, it's basar b'chalav derabanan. This derabanan, there's an actual isur on bishul as well. The shach writes, v'chein b'chalav mesa isura miya ika k'dv'kaman. Okay? So there is an Issa D'Rabbanan of Basar B'chalav. It seems to be even on the cooking as well. We'll go weiter again. Next time we will touch on all these things, but I just want to, let's go weiter. V'chein ha'mevashel basar b'mei chalav. If you cook basar in mei chalav, Mei chalav, we'll talk about this. What this means is basically when you remove cheese, there's like a milky, like the water is like milky. What is it?
Wait,
Yeah, but it's after. Yeah, it's after the whey is removed. We'll see later on what exactly is mei chalav. It's basically after you make the cheese, there's this milky residue. That cooking is not considered chalav yet. Oy chalav mesa, or chalav mesa is the milk of a dead cow. If after a cow dies, you take some of the milk out. Oy chalav zachar. Chalav zachar is a male animal, not a male person. We'll get to male person in a second. Chalav zachar, which means if you have a male animal and it for some reason lactates because it's on its journey, right? So the point is that is a rabbinic form of chalav. Oy shebishal dam b'chalav, or if you cook blood in milk, meaning blood is not basar. Dam, if you cook dam in chalav, potter. Ve'ein loikin ala chilasai mishum basar b'chalav. It's potter, and it's not an iser doraisa of basar b'chalav. Again, next week we'll talk about whether it's an iser dorabanan. If you look for a second at the shach in Tesvav, the shach writes, Ein loikin ala chilasai mishum basar b'chalav. Kiloshan hazeh kasav harambam. The Rambam also said this lashon. Umashma daito de mishum basar b'chalav hu de'ein loikin ala chilasa. If I take blood, focus on the blood case. I take blood and I cook it in milk. It's saying that if you eat it, it's not basar b'chalav doraisa. The Rambam says that also. Ein loken ala chilaso. Ha mishum dam loken ala chilaso. So the Rambam says you're not going to get lashes. It's not asa doraisa of basar b'chalav, but it is asa doraisa because it's blood. Blood of a cow is not allowed to be eaten. That's what the Rambam says. But says the Shach, afal pisha bishlu. What about the fact that you cooked it? The svirle dam shebishul oiver love. The Rambam shita is that if you cook blood, it's still aser doraisa. However, anon kaimelan we paskin dam shebishlu oishamalchu eina elam midrabanan. We paskin that blood after it's cooked, it's only rabbinic. So if you were to take blood, cook it in milk, and drink that entire concoction, it would only be an iser dorabanan. Basar b'chalav, it's not biblically, and blood once it's cooked loses its status. Okay, let's just go a little bit weiter. I want to start the Ramah, and I'm going to mention this halacha, and maybe next week we'll talk more about it. I'm going to run through it to get to more practical things. But the Ramah says like this. We said that chalav zachar is a male animal cow or male goat. Says the Ramah, the chalav zachar loy mikri chalav klal. The Shach explains this is talking about male person. If a male person gives off milk, that is not milk at all. That's a white residue that's coming out of his chest. That is not halachically milk at all. This is a male person. And even if it falls into your cholent, go ahead, eat the cholent fully. It is not a problem. But chalav mesa, and next week I'll review all these details. I know I'm running through this fairly quickly, but next week we'll review this. Chalav mesa, which is chalav of a dead animal, or mei chalav, which is the whey, that milky whey that's after. I stumble on. The point is that milky residue, when the cheese is removed, that is actually a problem. Not only is it derabanan, it'll actually trafe up the dish. Afilu bibishal yesh las l'chachila, and you should not cook it l'chachila. This is the line I want to cover. I'll mention it now, and we'll really talk about this next week. Yesh omrim. There are some that say, the aser lachtos ha'esh tachas kedera shel goy, lefi shehem mevashlim behem pamim chalav, pamim basar, v'machat tachas kedera shlehem ba lidei bishal basar b'chalav. What this means is like this. You have a fire in your living room, yeah? And there's a guy who has a pot on the fire. She's making whatever she's making. She's making her lunch. You want to stoke the coals. Now, why do you want to stoke the coals? Because you want to make the fire bigger. Because it's cold and you want it to heat up your house. You are not allowed to do that. Why? Because perhaps in the pot she's cooking milk and meat. Or, by the way, even if I know she's cooking noodles, but she might have cooked milk and meat within 24 hours, within the previous 24 hours. So by you stoking the coals, you're aiding in the cooking process of basar b'chalav without your knowledge. You don't even know what's cooking in there. Again, it's a sealed pot. You're not allowed to raise the intensity of the flame by stoking the coals because that will speed up the cooking process. And because you don't know what's in it, it's possible it's basar b'chalav. Okay, stop. This will be the last thing we talk about today, because it's 9:35, this is usually when I'll just mention this. This line has huge ramifications when it comes to the laws of Shabbos. Why is that? Okay, I'm stoking the coals. Am I mechavin to cook? No, it's davar she'eno mechavin, right? I'm not intending to cook. You say, yeah, but it's inevitable. It's called a psik reisha. It doesn't matter whether you have kavana, right? If I cut off the chicken's head on Shabbos, even if I want to do it because I want to have fun, because I want to play with the chicken's head, I'm eno mechavin, but it's psik reisha. It's inevitable. Davar she'en meschavin psik reisha is a problem on Shabbos. But here's the question. Is this psik reisha? Am I inevitably going to be cooking milk and meat? And the answer is, I don't know. I am missing information. This equation I'm missing. Meaning, I know what I'm doing will cause it to cook. I know if there's milk and meat in this pot, it will be inevitable. I don't know what's in this pot. This is what the poskim call a suffix psik reisha. It's a doubt whether my act is inevitable. And again, next week, I'm not going to harp too long because I know it's complicated, but this is what's called a suffix psik reisha, which means I'm doing something without intending to do an avera, but it might be inevitable. I don't have all the information. There's part of my equation, there's a question mark. If I was able to answer that, I'll tell you whether it's inevitable. I don't have that information. This is used by Hilchos Shabbos all the time. I'll give you an example, and then we'll end with this. Rav Avad Yosef uses this case in Hilchos Shabbos in the following example. You have a fridge. You want to open up the fridge. The question is, when you open up the fridge, will the motor go on? So is your kavana when you open up the fridge, right? When you open up the fridge, right, the temperature potentially goes up, which causes the motor to go on. Which that was a big shaila. They used to have a big problem. Are you allowed to open up the fridge on Shabbos because it causes the motor? Or when you're taking water from the water fountain, at some point, right, or Chaim, you drink the water from the water fountain. At some point, the motor just starts going on. Right? That's always when you hit the level where now the water is empty and the motor goes on. Are you allowed to do that? So the question is, again, it's very similar. Is your intention to turn on the motor? No. Is it inevitable? And the answer is, I don't know. Because I don't know the temperature inside the fridge. If I was given that equation, if I know the exact temperature inside the fridge, then I could tell you that by opening up the fridge, it might be inevitable. This is what's called a suffix psik reisha. And the suffix psik reisha, when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos, is very practical. We'll talk more about this next time. But again, I won't be too confusing. But this random line from the Ramah has potentially large ramifications. Well, according to the Ramah, it's going to be a problem. We'll talk next time about it. It's a suffix psik reisha. Huh?